you. Welcome everybody to the November 18th, 2025 board meeting for the Community Reinvestment Agency of Salt Lake City. Our meetings are public and you are welcome to join us in person, on Zoom, or by watching from the City Council's agenda page, YouTube, or SLC TV. We hope that you'll continue to join us in whatever manner you feel most comfortable. We begin our meeting with comments to the board. So if you're here to make comments on anything aside from the one scheduled public hearing, which is the budget amendment number 2, then this is your time to speak to the board. You may also send the board comments by submitting it by mail to P.O. Box 145476, Salt Lake City, Utah 84114-5476, emailing council.comments@slc.gov, or calling the 24-hour phone line 801-535-7654. Before we start, I'll remind everyone of the rules of decorum, which are in place to ensure our meetings move along well and help everyone feel comfortable sharing their comments. A copy of the full rules are available at the door from staff. If you are here to make general comments today, we are accepting them both in person and online on Zoom. Scott Corpany from our staff will moderate the Zoom message, and so if you're in Zoom and have questions, please message Scott. You can also raise your hand in the Zoom to indicate you need something, and if you're here in the room, you can also raise your hand and a staff member will assist you. Staff are handling many tasks, so limit those messages to technical issues and information updates if you could. Taylor Hill, another staff member, will be calling the names of those who wish to comment based on the order in which we received the comment cards or names. So if you are on Zoom, when Taylor calls your name, you may unmute your mic, or if you're here in person, come to, I think the podium is where we're taking comments from. So with that said, Taylor, please start with our first comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have 2 people registered. The first will be Lisa Imamura, followed by Jan Aramaki, and they are both here in person.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Lisa Imamura, and this is Jan Aramaki. We are both here representing the Salt Lake Buddhist Temple and the Japanese Church of Christ. Wow. It's been 8 years since the Japantown Street project began. This has been a fun process, even with the stops and starts. Thank you for including us in the design
Sorry.
process.
Can you make sure that there's a little green light on the base? Linda.
Should we restart?
Did you want me to start over?
Yes, please.
I think, yeah, if you could start from the beginning so that it can be recorded and the people online can hear.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Lisa Imamura. Jan Aramaki is over here. We are here representing both the Salt Lake Buddhist Temple and the Japanese Church of Christ. Wow. It's been 8 years since the Japantown Street project began. This has been a fun process, even with the stops and starts. Thank you for including us in the design process. The Japanese American community has been encouraged by the renewed efforts. Thank you to the Community Reinvestment Agency, especially Marcus Lee, for your guidance in pushing this project forward. Thank you, Mayor Mendenhall, Blake Thomas, Tim Cosgrove, and the City Council members for keeping this on the burners and turning up the heat again when the time became right. Thank you to the GSBS team for their guidance and great ideas. Over this past year, it's been a model process by including the stakeholders and infusing creativity and excitement. We appreciate the meetings between the CRA, GSBS, and the Japanese American community. The discussions have been collaborative, resulting in a beautiful solution to making Japantown an attractive destination for Salt Lake City. We also appreciate the outreach efforts by the CRA staff, GSBS, and the Mayor's Office to show the public the vision of the streetscape. They have had informational booths at Nihon Matsuri and the Salt Lake Buddhist Temple's Obon Festival to show the rendering and interact with the public. A final thank you to the community members who participated on each of the committees. Because of all of your involvement, this Japantown streetscape is coming to fruition. We respectfully but strongly encourage the CRA, the City Council, and the Mayor's Office to approve and support the renewed momentum for the next phase of the Japantown streetscape. In gratitude, we look forward to, with excitement and anticipation, to the upcoming changes and ask you to fully fund the Japantown streetscape.
Thank you.
And
Taylor,
next
next
is
commenter.
Jan Aramaki, who's here in person.
Good afternoon. It's good to see everybody. Thank you for having us. Thank you for this opportunity. I just want to say Lisa pretty much summed everything up, but I want to thank the mayor's office, the council, the board for supporting Japantown. We're very excited what GSBS and the CRA has been done to support us. They've come to our events and have been very helpful. And I really look forward to seeing Japantown become revitalized to be a gem cultural location for everyone in the state of Utah and the visitors. So thank you.
Thank you, Jan and Lisa. Are there any other commenters that would like to address CRA board today? All right, so that will close our general comment period. We will now move on to section B, which is individual hearings. Item B1 is regarding resolution CRA budget amendment number 2 for fiscal year 25 through 26. Do we have an introduction before? Oh yeah, it says that. Kate, are you prepared to give an intro? Okay, so before we begin taking comments, I'll turn the time over to Kate Warrett, Council Staff Policy Analyst, to give a short introduction to this item.
Thank you. This public hearing is to receive comments regarding the reappropriation of funds from the Depot District Infrastructure Design, Construction, and Site Work Project Fund into the Infrastructure Improvements Program for the acquisition of land. This transfer of funds is necessary to support the purchase of property and to construct a public right-of-way.
All right, thank you, Kate. Taylor, please start with our first public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do not have anyone registered to speak to this item.
Is there anyone in the room that wants to speak to budget amendment number 2? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public hearing. And just I'll note that there may be action taken on this item in our next section, which is now section C. The first item in section C is approval of minutes. I will look for a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, and just for the record, those are minutes for June 3rd, 2025 and June 10th, 2025. I have a motion from Board Member Pui and second from Board Member Dugan. Any discussion of this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously with all 7 board members present. Now we are on item C2, which is the budget amendment we just discussed. And I believe there's a motion sheet.
And the motion sheet, Mr. Chair, closes the public hearing. So I make the motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All right. I think we could also
it's a
adopt
different
that, right?
Yeah, I think, let me get some clarity really quick. Is it close and adopt budget amendment 2? Okay, thank you.
So I will update
amend
my
that
motion
motion.
to
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I will amend my motion. That's what I was odd because we already
It does,
closed the
yeah.
public hearing. Move to close and approve the item B1, in this case C2.
Second.
Okay, so the motion is to close the public hearing and adopt item C2. Motion from Board Member Pui and second from Board Member Dugan. Any discussion to this motion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. I see what I did. I think I messed that up.
I think I might.
But I think that we got it. I think we got it worked out, right? Okay. All right. So now we are on item C3, which is an informational update. 100 South between 600 West and Danzy Drive. Predisposition report. Austin Taylor from CRA, a CRA project manager, is here to present this, and I see Kara as well.
Thank you, board members. And I've got slides. There we go. Just pull this up. Okay, so we are here today to talk to you about a proposed disposition of CRA property. It's a Tier 1 property because it's over 2 acres in size, which means we're bringing it to you to let you know about this proposed sale or ground lease of this property and to get input that you have regarding our plan. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is an overview of the property. This is between 600 West and Dancy Drive and 100 South and 50 South. This is in the Depot District project area. We have 2.33 acres of land holdings here. Currently on the land, there is a vacant house and a vacant barn, and then a row of self-storage units which are occupied. The zoning here is gateway mixed use, the GMU zone. Generally, this is 75 to 120 foot height limit with minimal setbacks and a wide variety of uses allowed. Next slide. So the city and the CRA jointly have done quite a bit of planning work in this area to determine what we should see built in this neighborhood. So this goes as far back as 1998 when the CRA put together a project area plan for the Depot District. In 2016, the city completed a master plan for the downtown area, which also encompassed this parcel, this block. The CRA then did in 2019 a Central Station area plan, and then most recently, the CRA did the Rio Grande District Plan, which included a design workshop specifically for these parcels on 100 South. And then lastly, we also included this site in our HTRZ application. So there's been a lot of planning work going into what should go on this site, through the decades, honestly. And so we've taken all these plans and put it together into what we're proposing for the reuse of this site. So next slide, we'll show you what the proposed reuse is. And this photo, or this rendering, comes straight out of the Rio Grande District Plan in the 100 South design workshop. The orientation of this is the north is on the bottom of the rendering, but what you can see is in this yellow building on the south side of this rendering, which is the north side of the street. Sorry, it's complicated. It's turned around. But residential on top, artist space on the ground floor, and vertical farming behind it, bound by the railroad tracks and the freeway. So this redevelopment proposal comes out of, like I said, those decades of planning work, as well as community workshops where the group gathered stakeholders in the neighborhood, city staff, RDA staff, and put together this plan. And so ultimately, this is the kind of proposal that we're pitching in this RFP, in this land sale RFP, is number one, a requirement of artist space on the ground floor. And that could be a number of things. That could be studio space, it could be gallery space, it could be performance venues. So we're looking for that to be a requirement to activate 100 South. And then above and behind that artist space, that's flexible, that's more open to the market. But what we're targeting here is a preference for residential development. We'd love to see family-sized and for sale housing specifically as a preference. And then there's also a preference for vertical farming, which is, it's an indoor dense farming use, which came out of stakeholder meetings that we had for the Rio Grande District Plan. So this is the proposed end use that we're hoping to get when we sell this land. Timeline-wise, if we can go to the next slide, and then we can talk about the plan and get input. Timeline, we're looking to release a land sale RFP at the end of this year. And we'd give it a few months for developers to respond. And then Q2 of next year, we could go through those proposals, rank them, and then select a development partner to enter into negotiations with. So that's the end of my slides, and we'd love to hear questions you have and hear feedback you have on this redevelopment plan.
Thank you, Austin. Board members, any questions? Board Member Dugan? and then Pui.
Thank you, Austin. I appreciate the presentation. And, you know, I was looking through and reading through the staff report, and this is for sale. And part of the reason for sale is more for the need for some infrastructure, immediate infrastructure needs in the Rio Grande district. And my question is, because we've always also talked about keeping property and leasing it. And in this proposal that you have up here, I love the idea that we need the money for the infrastructure. I understand that part, but I'm also concerned that we also see a really difficult time for local businesses and small businesses to afford leasing of property, leasing of space because of the high lease rates. And so when we sell it to a developer, the lease rates go up, then we have a hard time getting local businesses to be there and housing to be there and other issues and other living amenities that we want to see because the cost is so high because we've sold them the property, they own the property and the land. And how are we balancing that to leasing it so that possibly the rent would be lower for the local businesses, for the vertical farm, for the rental units, balance that desire to build that community up instead of having it profits go to the developer. Is that, and I understand there's a cost need there, but I'm also concerned that we're going to have a piece of property here with high lease rates. That's not going to be for locals, it's going to be franchised, and we're not going to see that local injection of the community.
Yeah, so a couple questions to answer, it sounds like. So the first one is the question about selling versus ground leasing the property. And just like you said, Councilmember Dugan, the reason why we're proposing to sell this is because the Rio Grande District project needs significant funding for infrastructure. They have streets to build, pipes to put in, shared parking garages to build. So that's why we're proposing to sell it rather than ground lease it. It's for that one-time cash infusion that we could get from it. And then as far as controlling the end use of it, if we are concerned about retail lease rates, we could put a deed restriction on the property. Obviously, it would devalue the property, and so it means that we would get less of a sale price on it, and so that's less money for the Rio Grande District to use on infrastructure. But that is something that we could look into.
And was more question. The second question, in the staff reports, it talked about the zoning would allow self-storage units and parking garages, and how do we make sure we're not allowing, or we de-incentivize self-storage units and parking garages? Because I'm all for development, but I really don't see those as a for me.
Yeah, so I think the unfortunate reality is that the residential market has been saturated with rentals, with apartments. And the reality is that if we want to sell this property right now, it may be difficult to get a developer to build out an entire 2 acres of multifamily property. And so it might mean that half the site becomes condos, which would be great. And then the sacrifice that we take is that half of it becomes self-storage, which, you know, is not so great, but at least it's the stuff that's next to the train tracks, next to the freeway, you know, less desirable parts of the land. So we want to test the waters. We want to put it out there for sale and see what kind of thing we get. Obviously, we will prefer residential development over something like self-storage or parking garage, but we really don't know what we're going to get until we put it out there for proposals.
Board Member Pui.
I will have a bit of a different take on the parking situation, because that area is growing so much, and there is some spaces that require a lot of parking right now, and there is not enough. And if not, some of these venues will struggle if there is, if we are actually potentially envisioning more space for arts and culture. There has to be some growth in that side, I think. but to your point, there's obviously like a track station very close, and there is some infrastructure there. But I think that it needs to be balanced. I'm a little confused on the parcels that we're selling, because in the rendering, it shows this the one on 600 West and 100 South, a little square, the block over there that has a house that I saw being demolished this week, starting to get demolished this week, or which I had a question about because I really like that house. So we own that parcel, and here you have this whole block, but we don't own that, or do we? Where people, it's this dirt, very bumpy piece of land.
Yeah, we don't own that block that you're talking about. So if you look at the rendering, it says the words proposed residential non-RDA.
Yeah,
so
but we own
the sliver that in the rendering shows loading access. That's where the house is right now.
Okay, so that piece is part of this project as far as that little sliver, and you're putting that sliver for sale as well.
Yes, that would come up for sale along with these
the
other
rest.
pieces we have. Yes.
Okay, and ultimately, also your rendering shows that there is like the sidewalks are much wider, and there is a lot of more space for gathering in that area. Is that who's going to pay for? There is almost no curb and gutter, there is not curb and gutter in most of this area at all. So who's going to pay for all of those upgrades that you are envisioning in this proposal?
So yeah, the sidewalk and the curb and gutter, that's still to be determined. We haven't decided that. Do you have a better answer?
I don't have a better answer, but I think this rendering shows development up to the property line, and so that's just the width of the right-of-way, and if there were to be improvements that narrow the street and widen the sidewalk, those haven't been discussed yet.
Yeah, I guess I struggle with, you have a vision for the area, you're putting it for sale, but the vision for the area requires all of this walkability and this inviting space, but we have no funding for those pieces. And then when someone develops it, might not be interested in doing that unless we're sort of asking from the get-go, this is what we anticipate the sidewalk to be, so you sort of have to help us with this portion maybe. I know that diminishes the value of the thing that we're selling, but I'm trying to match, what you envision versus what we are. I hate putting something on a screenshot that it might not happen, because we might not have the money or the partners on the ground to help make it a reality. So generally, this area has a huge amount of potential, and I can see what you envision here, but I struggle from your envisioning to what is going to happen in reality if we don't think about the funding for those pieces.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Thank you.
I have a question. Just we put it out for RFP, but the RFP is for sale at market rate or somewhere in that range. And we select a developer, they transact and own the land and then don't build what they said they did. Do we put protections in the sale that they must build what they've proposed to build, and if not, we have the first right of refusal, or the land just reverts back to the CRA? What does that look like in terms of, since this is a little bit different than RFPs that we've done in the recent past, what does that look like for us?
Yeah, we generally have development agreements when we're selling land that'll specify what's going to get built on the site. On a ground lease, obviously you have more control long-term over it, but either way, we specify what gets built before we sell the land.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's it.
Oh, okay. And then, so that development agreement is recorded on the property until the project is complete and we can see that what we required has been built, and that's when we issue a certificate of completion, and that's when the development agreement can be removed from the title. And until that point, we often have a right of reverter or right to repurchase, something like that, built into our.
But if I'm sort of thinking through Board Member Dugan and Board Member Pui's comments, and just think through the idea that we're going to sell this at market rate, which, as you mentioned, really gives us a much weaker position in terms of asking for public benefits, including infrastructure improvements or what the land is actually used for. We're moving forward with this project. We're making the decision that we're going to capitalize on this land in order to move it a block south to our property right next to the Rio Grande Depot. And I think that's a policy decision, right? That is basically what we're being asked to do, or we're discussing today. I don't think it's a terrible idea. I think as CRA funds in specific project areas start to run out, and I know this is an older project area, so we don't expect that a lot more increment is going to come into it. And if I think forward to something like even the Ballpark Next plan, I know that's a very different context, but as the city budgets start to get a little bit tighter, we're expecting the upcoming fiscal years to become more tight. We may have to make these hard decisions of, do we want to sell property and extract fewer public benefits in order to get money in order to put them to other projects where, you know, the property right next to the Rio Grande station is arguably more important that we invest those public benefits in than this property a block north. But I mean, it's a decision. It's an important conversation, I think. But I think it is something an unfortunate conversation that we're going to have probably more and more in the next few years if we want to keep these projects moving forward. Okay, no action is needed on this, right? Go ahead, Board Member Dugan.
When you talked about the vertical farming, I know that's growing. A lot more businesses are looking that way. A lot more agriculture is going that direction. Vertical farming, a lot less water. There's a little more high intensity on the energy side, but the water side is less, and it's year-round growth for different products. And it's small. You know, this is a small footprint compared to a large farm, but. Is there a lot of interest in Utah with this? Is someone already talking about doing a vertical farm, or is that just our dream use of the area?
So I will say it's a small and yet to be proven concept.
Right.
There are a lot of pilots. Well, there are a few pilots throughout the country run by a few different small businesses. And there's no end user in particular that we're looking to sell this to. It's honestly, you know, this hosted a large community garden in the past, and we want to ensure that people nearby have access to locally grown fresh food. So we're testing the waters and seeing if a business is willing to try something like this in this area. And if not, that's okay. It's just a preference in this land sale.
Boston, you said that was in our documents from a decade ago, that we had already anticipated vertical farming?
No, this is a recent thing
okay.
in the 2024 Rio Grande District Plan.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, board members, any more questions or comments on this item? All right, so let's move on to item C4, C4, which is an informational Japantown streetscape and public art update. Very excited for this briefing. Thank you to, I see a lot of community members and friends that are here for this, so thank you for joining us. Danny Wall, CRA Director, and Marcus Lee, Project Coordinator, are here, and I see Ben from GSBS as well. So looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Danny,
I'm speaking only to buy Marcus time to sit down, get settled, and check his notes. Turn it over to him for a presentation.
All right, thank you, board members. I hope everyone's ready to party. We're ready. As Lisa pointed out earlier, this project's been a long time in the making, so we're very happy to be here to present this milestone. There's a lot of history in Japantown going back to the 1880s with the first residents moving to Utah as the railroads came through, and all the way through today. 2 weeks ago, the Japanese Church of Christ had their 101-year time capsule opening, so things are still happening on the street that are relevant today as they were relevant, 101 years ago. So, all right, next slide, please. All right, so very briefly, CRA involvement began in 2018 with the West Quarter development. We were asked to facilitate between the development group and the community as some concerns arose, and we were able to get get some concessions that we'll dive into briefly later. 2019, that facilitation process resulted in the design guidelines and strategy documents. And that turned into what we're going to present today, the 40% construction document. Now. Okay. Maybe. Okay, so just really quickly highlighting our initial involvement, that's still ongoing. We were able to negotiate 4 concessions from the Ritchie Group, the developer of the West Quarter, that are still in play today. We coordinated to make sure that trash pickup and other back-of-house functions would not interfere with church services or the 2 annual festivals. We were able to improve connectivity between some of the church-owned parcels and the new development as they interface with Japantown Street. And we currently reserve 10% of the annual Block 67 tax increment to be used for public right-of-way improvements on Japantown Street. Next slide, please. So back in 2021, the CRA contracted with GSBS Architects as the prime consultant to help us flesh out the translating the community-generated ideas into the 40% documents we're going through today. One important thing that came through this process was kind of the vision statement of Japantown. And through a lot of community input and coordination, that statement was crafted to be Okaga Samade. That roughly translates into like, I am who I am because of you. It was intended that Japantown be a place of remembrance and respect and a place that thrives over time, but is also a place of inclusion. Next slide, please. So the design site plan you see before you here is what came out of a lot of community engagement, surveying, and incorporating a lot of community wishes that are very important. So currently, 100 South is not ideal for hosting festivals. The crown of the road is relatively steep, and there are a lot of challenges the community has while hosting their festivals. This design highlighted placemaking improvements, such as improved lighting, improved public art. There were concerns about improving the walkability of Japantown Street, and specifically the festival improvements, such as flattening the crown and possibly considering electrical access for vendors and a lot of the participants of the festivals. These were important to the community. The design also preserved the existing number of parking spaces that currently exist, so church and funerals and other community events would not have an impact on their parking or other mobility needs. This design also accommodates the fire lanes and access required as development occurs on 100 South. Next slide, please. Okay, so real briefly, we have worked with GSBS in the community to bring these 40% documents to you, and we've translated them from the community wishes and desires into a fully validated technical document that can be built upon in the future, should work proceed. And we have, sorry, I should have mentioned this before, we have Ben with us from GSBS. He is instrumental in designing a lot of what you're about to see. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And I'll turn the next slide over to Ben.
Thanks for the opportunity today to talk about this project with you guys. I'm going to talk a little bit about the technical aspects we encountered during the 40% design, as well as sort of how the design moved along on the streetscape. So when we first started this in the design guidelines, the community asked for 2 things. And the first thing they asked for was, can we make the crown of the roadway flat? It's really steep out there. It's hard for them to have chairs on the street during their festivals, and it's really sort of a safety concern. So the first thing that we had done to address that was do a survey of the street and understand how steep the roadway actually was, and what we could do there. The second thing they asked is that the street still needed to work for both festivals that they hold on the street. One's held in April and the other one is held in July. So those are the overarching things that we started to look at when we did this. And so when we did the survey of the street, we found that there's a lot of utilities in the street, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later in the process. And we really understood the grade of the street. And so what we did from there is take the design guidelines concept, which really came out of that design guidelines phase. And the main design concept in that was a double row of cherry trees down the entire street. And this is very, very important to the Japanese community. It's very resemblant of them and their culture. And so we worked everything we could possible to keep those along throughout the whole design process. So from there, we scheduled different meetings with city departments, public utilities, engineering, urban forestry, accessibility, planning and zoning, streets, operation and maintenance. And we really presented this project to everybody in the city and those departments to really understand what their concerns were and how we could address those earlier on in the 40% design. One key thing that I'll mention from that is the urban forestry department wanted to keep the large London plane trees, which you see here in the green on the north side of the street, because they're very tall and they provide a lot of shade to the street, and they felt that that was very important and they're healthy. So the double row of cherry trees in this concept is not able to be kept through that because of that request from urban forestry. Go ahead, Marcus, if you had something.
Yeah, and it's just, we'd like to highlight, all of this wasn't be possible without a lot of the community input. There's a lot of invested individuals, and we just like to thank them as well. Next slide, please. So as been mentioned, we have very complex utilities underlying the street, and we just wanted to highlight the complexity it adds to this project. There are 2 utilities that are anywhere between 4 and 6 inches below the road surface. So we just wanted to highlight that as well.
And this is the reason why the crown is so high on the street. So we had a potholing exercise done, which means it finds a way to find the top of that utility. Usually they don't do that. They can do it with like scanning, but then they actually dig down into the street and figure out how low that is. And so because of that, the middle of the street was so high that they had to surface up on either sides of the street. That's why grades on either side of the street are really steep and cause the problem with the chairs. So that's reflected in the cost estimate, a price to remove those and relocate those so that the street can be flattened out.
Okay, next slide, please. So now we're going to get into kind of the core of the 40% designs. We're going to highlight some placemaking elements that received a lot of community input and received a lot of excitement as it pertains to this project. Next slide, please. So very briefly, this map highlights anywhere in purple is where a vertical placemaking element like signage, art, trees, anything can stick up out of the ground. Next slide, please. So first, there was a lot of excitement to have like entryway monuments that would denote your passage into Japantown. These were of particular importance to the community to provide that identity on the current borders of Japantown. Next slide, please. Here we have a crosswalk. That was another request of the community. Crosswalk would help improve pedestrian safety and add a little vibrancy during the festivals and daily use. Next slide, please. As part of the design process, there's a lot of emphasis on highlighting the history of Japantown. So not only the recent history, but kind of the origin of when the first people of Japanese descent arrived in Utah. So the streetscape contemplates kind of like a running historical timeline embedded in the sidewalk through the length of Japantown Street. Next slide, please. Here we have some of those vertical elements that could be placed along the street that could contain pictures or messages or historic notes for important moments during Japantown or important community events. Next slide, please. Again, some different types of vertical elements to increase engagement and activation of the street. These could be used to highlight important events or contain pictures of historic Japantown as well. Next slide, please. Here, there was great discussion over custom manhole covers. I believe there's 26 manholes along the street, and these received a lot of excitement about having Japanese culture engraved or embedded on these manholes as well to add that extra flair. Next
If you've
slide.
never been to Japan, the manhole covers there are exquisite. Every city has their own design, and it's really part of the culture there.
Yeah. Here, also, we had a lot of design meetings, and there's a lot of content. So we're highlighting a lot of the cultural elements that the community would like to see. So here we have hypothetical seasonal stampings that could be stamped into the concrete to highlight the 4 seasons along Japantown Street. Next slide, please. Of particular note were the requests to have a place to hang banners, whether they be for the annual festivals, for specific community events, or just having seasonal banners. We added these as well into the design. Next slide, please. Here we have a somewhat detailed view of the possible locations of the Japanese cherry trees. They're in the packet. There's the full details of the planting plan and other technical requirements, but the plan does emphasize the double row of cherry trees where possible. Next slide, please. And here we have the pedestrian lighting and taller, I guess, like safety light poles. There's a lot of input on what they should be reminiscent of, and the community expressed a preference on having a Japanese-esque type design on these light poles. The one on the right would be a smaller kind of like human-sized light to be more lighting on the sidewalk for pedestrians. Next slide, please.
So I'll quickly add to that, Marcus, that throughout the process, we worked with the community to develop all of these elements. And there was community members on 2 separate committees, and one was more about the development of the street and the technical aspects of the street and how the concept was moved along through this 40% design. And the other element was really about all the placemaking elements on the street. And we worked with the community, got their feedback to develop the ideas and the thoughts and the content of all the placemaking elements that Marcus just shared there. So the community was really involved in this process, and we had a wrap-up meeting last month with members of the community, and members of the city were there as well, and all the members that were there from the community were really happy with the outcome of where the project landed and the 40% design cost estimate, or not the estimate, but the drawings.
And everything we just discussed is included in the cost estimate, which is estimated to cost a little over $11 million. That is everything from earthwork, material, labor, contingency, insurance requirements, et cetera. So these are detailed in the packet attached to the cost estimate. And if future design were to continue, this could be refined slightly, but this is a very detailed cost of what it would take right now to construct Japantown as envisioned in the documents. Next slide, please. Also, as part of this project, we have been contemplating what public art might look like, and we have been working with the community on a mural, and right now we are anticipating painting a mural on the side of the multi-ethnic senior housing tower that faces 100 South. The visibility provides a prime location to do something above ground that could contribute to the beautification of Japantown. Right now, we are organizing an art committee of community members, mesh board members, to have input on what the potential design may be, to review potential artist portfolios. We are hoping to have a spring 2026 reveal, weather permitting. These details will be further fleshed out with the Arts Council as we discuss this. We have some immediate next steps we're working with the Community and Arts Council to undertake this art project, and we have a very tentative cost of $50,000 to $75,000. This estimate will be refined as we get the square footage on the paintable surface and decide how large we want to paint a mural. Next slide, please. So we do have some next steps. As originally envisioned, the CRA involvement ended after the 40% documents would be completed. Given that there have been some changes in the past couple years, we're presenting the board with some options of how you would like to proceed next. Option one is to allocate allocate funding and maintenance funding for short-term improvements that could contribute to the beautification of Japantown Street, such as the purchase of trees, planters, and any placemaking elements that are not necessarily affected by any future construction. Option two is to allocate funding for additional design. Option three is to begin identifying funding sources for construction funds for this project. As part of this, funding may include construction mitigation grants for the churches who have expressed a lot of concern about what future may have on their respective churches and communities. And the fourth option is to consider not taking any action until next summer, when more details of the entertainment district are revealed at that time. If this were to happen, we would bring this project back before the board for reconsideration. And next slide, please. That concludes our presentation. We wanted to make sure we leave time for any questions, comments, and discussion. We're happy to go back and discuss any slides in particular if you need more time on those.
Thank you, Marcus. Before we get into discussion, I just want to say thank you for all of this work. It means a lot to me personally for obvious reasons, but I know that it has been a big effort, and it's something that if I think back through the whole history of Japantown and Salt Lake City, but also the recent history of what has happened and the actions that we have taken as a city in this specific area, I'm so grateful that, and I don't know whose idea it was back when the Block 67 development was proposed, that predates my term on council, but that there was an idea to do the streetscape improvement way back in 2018 when the first sort of development in recent history, because I think that the fact that we started that back then is so important for us to be able to be having this conversation today in light of a much bigger development happening on the north side of Japantown Street. So thank you to whoever's idea it was then. Thank you to CRA staff, to GSBS, and of course to the community members who over the years have been involved. And I know there have been countless unpaid volunteer hours by the people sitting in these chairs back there to help give input on this process. So before we get into discussion, I just want to give that personal thank you. So really appreciate it. Board members, Pui?
Certainly, I'm excited about the options you presented, because to the timeline that you just mentioned, and it was mentioned in the presentation, has been in the making for way too long. And I know things have changed, especially with the district, the entertainment district right next to it. But I felt like we are anxious to see something. And when I was in your position as the chair of the then RDA, the direction that we asked the RDA was to see something sooner rather than later, and to see some of the, at least some of the art pieces happening, even if they needed to be moved. And I remember that conversation. Unfortunately, we didn't see that happen. Yet again, a little delay on delivering. But I do see, I'm excited to see that there is a proposal to see something happen now, and in option one is something that I will support. I do see that the language there it's problematic in the option as it's written. It says placemaking elements that will not be affected by the entertainment district construction. We don't know what is going to be constructed, be affected, and the purpose of doing some planters for the trees is because they probably be affected and they're going to have to be moved. So I want us to acknowledge that there is going to be an impact, but it is our commitment to do something sooner rather than later, and we want to see some of these elements happen, so we don't get too wowed by the entertainment district and forget the soul of this neighborhood is this street. And so I support option one, and I will like to make
Can we pull up that page with the next steps options?
But I would like to make sure that the clarification on the language is there, that anything that we do potentially could be affected, and that's okay. I don't want more excuses about, but we're going to have to move the piece of art. Yes, yeah, we can move a piece of art, right? And ultimately, it is my opinion that that we need to see something there starting, even though it may get affected by the entertainment district. So thank you for the presentation. Thank you for walking us through all the extensive work that has been done with the community and to propose something this beautiful. I really want to start seeing some hope there. I'm looking forward to it. So thank you.
Board Member Dugan?
Yeah, I appreciate those comments, Board Member Puy, because I totally agree with that. It'd be nice to get something out there, and I think we mentioned that also when we did the walkthrough. It's like, okay, we may have some changes, but we're presenting our first step here. Here's our vision of the area and our steps for going forward on the areas, and not having to react to the entertainment district telling us what they want to do in the area. But just also understanding that north side of the street is going to be a challenge just because of whatever they're looking at as far as truck traffic and unloading and loading stuff. But yeah, I'm in agreement with option one, but also like, can you do 1.5 and part of 2? It's like, you're part of 3 too, because it's all good work, and I want to.
These options aren't mutually exclusive, right?
Correct.
More than
Correct. So, as the board, you may decide to blend options to come up with an option of your own, but these are not necessarily mutually exclusive. We felt these are some of the more immediate steps that can.
Right. And I'm looking at. I like the first 3 options, but I'm not in favor of the last one.
Thank you. That's where I'm at as well. First of all, I just want to acknowledge $11 million. It's a large amount of money, but it's much better than I was expecting. When I think in the first round of documentation, it was, I think if I remember correctly, it was a $7 to $14 million estimated range from then. And so to get further down the line and 5 years later in time and find out that we're really looking at 11 million instead of what I was worried would be more like 20 million, that's good news. So I'm encouraged by that we may be able to accomplish this vision as it's been laid out. Board members, I know we haven't been asked for a specific, well, actually, let me ask Marcus and Danny this. For the mural, you already have that funding in place and allocated, right? We don't need a budget amendment in order for that to move forward. Is that correct?
Correct. We already have art funding allocated.
Okay. What about for the cherry trees and the above ground planters? Can we discuss that a little bit more, whether that requires board action to approve? And then if you could just touch on the maintenance to make sure, so we know, like, that you mentioned that was included in some estimate, but what that would look like, who would do that maintenance. Do you have information on that?
So we would definitely, for any maintenance, specifically as it relates to the trees, work with city staff first to make sure it's even feasible. We could undertake options to see if the city could do it, or perhaps contract it out, or a combination of both. As to funding to procure the trees, I believe we would need an allocation.
Fire board action.
Okay. I would love for us, if the board is not opposed to it, I'd love to ask you to do a little bit more research on like how much that would be, who would maintain that, and so that we could discuss that as an action. I'd love to see those trees in the spring, if that's possible. So before the next annual budget, if we can identify funding that could happen in a budget amendment or whatever the case may be, I'd love for us to at least learn more about the above ground planter trees. I think it'd be really great. And if they're in planters and they can be moved later, that seems like a good way to get something on the ground now, in addition to the mural, to really identify that this is Japantown. And then once we know more from the SEG Entertainment District development, then we can move forward with the more permanent, streetscape, ground floor things. And but I would really love to see those two things there. So as people visit the area and anticipate what's going to be coming in the future, many changes, they know immediately by visiting it that this is also Japantown and that the city is investing in that. Board Member Young.
Yeah, so I agree with the previous comments related to option one, and then comprising of the funding components, just so we have more awareness related to option two, and trying to combine those things. I'm going to add a option 5, which is also just asking that we pursue doing a formal presentation with the architect and others involved in SEG. I don't want this to be an email to them. Like, I really do want there to be an opportunity, in the same way you've done for us, to walk us through what the future elements look like, to know that that communication has taken place related to their awareness in terms of informing as they're working on their design plans, to know what the city commitments and vision for this area looks like.
I'll respond to that real fast. Yes, we're not involved formally in those conversations with SEG, but we're happy to coordinate with those in the administration that are, to find the best way to deliver that presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a great comment. Board Member Young, thank you. Board Member Petro.
I just want to emphasize more a process. Whatever the community feels is most appropriate, given our current constraints in terms of uncertainties and finance, is what we need to do, and we need to do it as expeditiously as possible. The only thing I will be upset about is if we create broken promises to a community where we are trying to restore a legacy of broken promises. So whatever we commit to with timelines, with resourcing, with certainty, whatever we put in place, we're 1,000% sure that we can move whatever tree, so that we're not having to reinvent wheels, both as a fiscal component and as a restorative culture component of this. I think that, to me, if I see that those are the guiding principles in place, that the community is receptive, and that we're not just writing a new script on top of people who have already had to sacrifice a lot for what we have, then I think this is successful. But for me, what I want to see is an efficient, quick movement to restore trust and dignity where it has been stripped out. I want to see us assertively at the table to make sure that whoever is coming to this game late and profit off of it mightily understands their responsibility to it. And I want us to be looking ahead so that we're not creating additional problems or trauma with this project.
Thank you. Board Member Petro. I think of those options as next steps, including what Board Member Young just added. I would like us to move forward with those and try and get the mural and the trees in place as soon as possible, making sure that we have maintenance plans for for the trees. But also looking forward to the 70 or even 100% documents being funded in the upcoming fiscal year and beginning to discuss how we fund the full project. I think our city has and is leading in this effort, but I also believe that there's responsibility on the part of the county and on the part of the developers that are, as Board Member Puccio said, profiting off of this area to also contribute to that. But it seems like the streetscape design, it's in the public way, it's in a street that we own, so that really is our responsibility on that. And I would like for us to continue to set the standard for moving forward with how to restore this area into what future generations will be able to come visit as a Japantown. And remember that history, but also remember the future of this community in that area. So I would love for those conversations to begin as to like, how do we get to 11 million? I know that it's not likely or even possible at all that the 10% Block 67 increment will amount to $11 million. So I know that there's going to be other funding sources that are going to be necessary in addition to that. So as I would like to start that conversation of how to engage in whatever other funding sources might be necessary for that. I think that now's the time to have those conversations.
I just wanted to add, I know there was a question about, what would 1.5 look like, or a difference between option 1 and option 2. And really, the next phase of design is actually the content of the placemaking elements. So what we have done is we have located them. We've worked with the community to generally decide what they are, but we haven't worked with them to figure out what's actually on the content of the placemaking. So that's one thing that could be considered. The other thing is sort of the grading of the street and tying it into the rest of the context. So when you do 40% design, it's just general grading of the street. So those are some things that could, from a design stance, move the project along a little bit further, and could be that option 1.5.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Quick note, it's something that popped in my head. I remember in my district we lost a few tree grades. I mean, we often lose them or they're broken up. It took forever to get those like standard tree grades, great, to cover the area. And I cannot even imagine how long something like this will take. So I wonder if we have accounted for the time to commission something like this and design them, ordering them. I mean, if a standard one took over a year, I wonder how a custom one will take. So I wonder if we can start exploring timelines on that matter, because if we need to start funding some of these smaller pieces that might take years or a long time to be delivered, I would like maybe to be ahead of the curve and trying to get to that place.
So Ben, is what I'm hearing you say that there is actually work that may take a lot of time that is not necessarily dependent on where SCG needs a curb cut, like figuring out what historic events and images need to be put on those plaques is work that could proceed now, and it's just where that actual plaque fits, if it's at this point or 10 feet to the west because of SCG's plans. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, we've located the placemaking elements on the current context of the street, right? And when we have updated context of the street, some of those locations might change, but we've worked with the community to understand what they want those placemaking elements to look like. So say there's 26 in-ground plaques. We don't know exactly what those 26 in-ground plaques are going to say. We could work with the community, or the next step could be working with the community to define all of that content. What is that actual story and what's important to them to show in those 26 plaques, regardless if it moves 10 feet east to west or 5 feet north to south. That's kind of where it's.
Yeah, no, I think that I hadn't thought through it in that exact way. So I don't know if that's the 70% or what that means in terms of funding the work that needs to take place into that. But that is a really hard thing, and in order to decide exactly whose names appear and what history is taught, and confirming those dates and facts and making sure that it's run by a broad number of people so that people can check both the facts, but also that it's presented in a way that is appropriate. So if that's work that needs to be done, I'd love to see that proceed so that we have the content ready to go. Once we know what SCG is doing, then we can decide where that gets placed. But that is, so I guess I'm not sure what that means. Danny, maybe you have an idea of like how that could proceed in the meantime.
I think if we're hearing this right, what this could be is a scope for what is that next step. Not necessarily to your point, full-blown 70% construction drawings, but what are those elements we can work on leading up to that specifically would not necessarily be wasted effort if something changes with SCG. But
yeah,
I think that could be a next step, and then that could be potentially presented as part of next year's budget for a funding request that says, here's how we can now do this next step, keep moving it forward, and work on these pieces.
And that's also work that additional time probably makes the result better. So being able to move forward with that in the meantime while we're waiting on what SCG is going to do, to know where it physically goes, using that time, I think makes the outcome better than trying to rush. This is what it should look like. And how, Jennifer Bruno?
Yeah, just to confirm, just so that the board understands, is that work, does that work require additional funding? Okay, so the board would see that then in the context of the annual budget that would come to you guys in May. So we'll be looking for that line item in May.
And the annual budget, I mean, I guess I'd also want to just put out there that it doesn't seem like totally inappropriate timing within the annual budget to allocate the full funding for the design process, because it seems to me like the annual budget's adopted in June, and then that funding can go through all the way through June of 2027, right? By that time, we should know what SCG is doing, or at least have a better idea. And if I'm understanding correctly, because it's a capital improvement, we can allocate the full funding for the design, but it's not like it has to be completed within the annual budget. Is that right?
And actually, the contract with GSBS can also span fiscal years.
Multiple fiscal years, right?
Once it's encumbered against a contract, it doesn't lapse to fund balance.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would love for the full, it seems like the timing would be right for the full funding for the 100% documents to be allocated in the next fiscal year, even if that work cannot be done right on June 1st of 2026. Right. It needs to take, be measured to when we know what's going to happen to the north of it. But it seems like, to me, that seems like the right timing. So that's what I'd be hoping to see. Board members, any other comments on this? Wharton?
And just also wanted to, sorry, I raised my hand earlier, but before if that's okay. Just appreciating the work that's been done so far, having the chance to learn more every year about this community, and most recently getting a chance to attend the time capsule opening at the Japanese Church of Christ, and I'm excited to move forward with this phase of the plan, and even more excited to be discussing the next phase. So excited to get through this step so we can get to the subsequent ones. Thank you.
Thanks, Board Member Wharton. Lopez Chavez?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight how many people attended that 100-year celebration. We had congressional delegates, different individuals from associations that have great interest, and then the greater interfaith community. So it's really beautiful. The only comment I didn't hear made today was in terms of the county's design and the Japanese park. So something that I believe this study could go deeper in talking with our consultants, is the egress points for that park. It's currently, as you walk by or drive by, difficult to access unless you're accessing it from the Japanese Church of Christ. I think that's a great opportunity for us to open it up as we look to putting a banner or whatever our construction is, to really be considerate of what the county may do to activate that area as a green space or a space of respite as you're taking a walk down Japantown Street. But thank you for your hard work. This is beautiful, and I know it means a lot to the community members that are here and also to the families that have a legacy at Japantown Street. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'll just circle back to my first comment. This means so much to me personally, and I just really appreciate all the hard work that's going into this and can't wait to see that work continue and the reveal of a giant mural in spring. I'm very excited to be there. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I can attempt to answer your
Please
first
do.
question
Yeah.
of where this all started. I think it's fair to say it started with the Japanese American community. And I say this as a compliment, who are not shy in sharing their thoughts and opinions. And I think as they got word of the Block 67 project is when we collectively as a city and the CRA started hearing it. Corinne Piazza, if you remember, was the first staff member who really took the charge and accepted that challenge as part of the project area. And Director Wharton is, I think, the one person who's now still around who can speak to that didn't happen without board support. So that was a big deal. Mayor Mendenhall at the time was on the council. Like, that was the initiative and the requirement that if we did that. So
yeah, and
that's
Corinne,
how it
if you're
started.
listening, we appreciate all your work. Very happy that Marcus has stepped in to fill those shoes, but thank you,
Marcus
Danny.
has filled Corinne's role very well in terms of enthusiasm.
Thank you so much for this and the presentation. All right, so we are now on item C5, which is a report and announcements from the executive director. Danny. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you're right. Anything from the mayor's table? Okay. Chair and vice chair. Vice chair, do you have any comments? I don't have any comments. So CRA staff, I think you.
Yes, I'm hoping we have
presentation,
the
right?
slides submitted. I think here they come. Next slide, please. Thank you for pulling those up. First, I think some of you have heard us mention this before, but just to go over one more time, I wanted to make sure everyone's aware that we have released our notice of funding availability for our housing development loan program. This was released on October 21st. It puts $8 million out on the street for developers to provide the gap financing for affordable housing development. You'll recall that you as a board, as part of our annual housing funding priorities, put the thresholds on this, that projects have to qualify with at least 10% of the units have to target deeply affordable, which is defined as 30% AMI or less, or family-sized housing units, which are 3 bedrooms or more, for those earning 60% or less of AMI. Next slide, please. As part of the same notice of funding availability, we also released funds that you as the board approved to be targeted for residential wealth building efforts. This is over $6 million in funds that are available to fund developments that help low to moderate income individuals and families access affordable housing and wealth building opportunities. This includes everything from home ownership to shared equity, anything that can help improve their long-term financial stability. So combined, that's over $14 million in funding that's on the street right now for projects, and applications are due on December 4th. Next slide, please. Wanted to notify the board as of an upcoming ribbon cutting on December 2nd for Citizens West 2 and 3. This is a project that received just over $3 million through the CRA's competitive NOFA. Additionally, the developer is including a percentage for public art, publicly visible artwork, I should say. But this is a project that is on 509 West, 300 North, 80 units, featuring everything from 45 studios to 25 3-bedroom units and 10 4-bedroom units. 64 of those units are for households earning 45 to 50% AMI, and 16 of the units for households earning 25 to 39% AMI. So we're excited for this project to open up. Next slide. Also, you should have heard on October 30th, we did the ribbon cutting for the Perpetual Housing Funds project at 515 East, 100 South. Mr. Chair, you asked for a quick update on PHF. So you'll recall that this ribbon cutting was for their adaptive reuse of a office building into 96 units of affordable housing. That includes their tenant wealth building initiative. The units consist of studios to 4-bedroom units, and the residents and households earning 25 to 50% of the area median income. The project also includes a Montessori school and co-working office space. Bit of background for those on the Perpetual Housing Fund. You recall that the city, by way of the CRA, provided $10 million in ARPA funds to go into the Perpetual Housing Fund as an equity investment. PHF will use this for the acquisition of properties. In this case, it was for the floors of the office building to convert into affordable housing. And then we also provided through the CRA a 2.65 high opportunity area affordable housing loan. Our role within the Perpetual Housing Fund, along with that $10 million contribution, the intention is that as projects are completed, our funds within the PHF, along with others, revolve into other projects. So those funds are used as seed funds in terms of acquiring sites, doing the initial design, getting projects to where they secure their construction financing. Once those projects are completed and that construction financing is closed, those initial seed funds get reimbursed back to PHF and then become a revolving source of funds for additional projects. The commitment from PHF is that they will do this to build over 1,000 affordable units in the next 10 to 20 years. And then our benefit for our investment in PHF is that we get a 2 to 6% return on those funds that we can continue to use for affordable housing. So PHF already has and is working on up to 2 or 3 of their next projects that will be that revolving of those funds and continue to provide an additional 700 wealth building units just within those 2 to 3 projects. So, Mr. Chair, you asked for a more detailed report. We will plan on doing that at either the January or February board meeting. But just by way of this ribbon cutting and a lot of the news on the project, we wanted to make sure everyone kind of remembered what our role was in that, and that now that that project is done, you will probably start seeing how those funds get revolved into the next projects.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I know that I look forward to, at that point, listening to the presentation about the update on the Perpetual Housing Fund. This is really important for us to keep tabs on because we did invest so much. Our investment in this case was much more than a typical development that we have invested in, which is not insignificant in and of itself. So I think understanding how that works, and then as those tenants start to move in and start to accrue equity, I'd love for that to be a long-term conversation that we're keeping tabs on. Do those tenants actually get equity paychecks, and what have they been able to accomplish with those? So those are things that this is important because it's a way to help people that can't afford a house still build equity. And I think knowing if it actually works is going to be important for us, because as we move into the future and housing prices continue to go up, we're probably going to need more of these programs. So knowing whether or not this is successful and something that we should invest further in, or we or other entities or just society as a whole should invest more in some of these types of programs, is going to be important. So I'm glad that we're involved in it, and I'm glad that these units are open. And I just want to make sure we're keeping tabs on the long-term viability as to, is it actually producing what was promised? So thank you for that.
No, thank you.
All right.
I believe that is all we have for updates. Happy to answer any questions. Oh, sorry.
Can I just ask, how regularly should a council be expecting to get updates on this project, especially like we have a 20-year event horizon on it?
That's a great question, and that is the byproduct of what came out of the chairperson's request, is reaching out to PHF and asking, what does that report look like? What is that frequency, and how do we keep you abreast on that? So happy to have that conversation of what that frequency is, but as we're figuring that out, I think it's just a matter of everything you said, Mr. Chair, of it's important to know what those returns are that we're getting and how often you want to be brought up to speed on that.
I'd also it'd be nice once people start moving in and have the chance to build the equity to track that, to make sure this does feel like proof of concept that we've seen elsewhere, and I'd like to be able to track that and let people know that things like this are possible to try to proliferate them.
And if I remember correctly, the agreement with PHF had off-ramps in it, right? Where if certain metrics weren't met, there was like a point at which the city could get refunded the $10 million, or there were different things like that. So maybe we look to back at that contract and figure out, making sure that we're getting those updates at the points in the contract at which we can exercise whatever rights or things like that.
Yeah, we can take that deeper dive into the contract and provide you an update on what those are or what those conditions are and track those as part of the reporting.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Danny, for being here and
Thank
for
you very
providing
much.
the update. I appreciate that. Let's see, do have a written briefing, which is the Community Investment Agency Semi-Annual Property Report, which is actually a really interesting report for all of the different properties we own. So take a look at that. So that takes care of D. Section E is consent, and there's nothing on our consent agenda, and I don't believe we have a closed session. We need a closed session, so I think we are adjourned. Mr. Council Chair, when would you like to reconvene?
3:45 is what we have listed on the agenda. That's what we'll do. Okay.
Okay, thank you.